sure your microphone is muted. Perfect. So after the presentations, there will be a roundtable session. So if you have any question, please raise your hand. We want to hear your voice. So let's get started. Our first speaker is Barbara Papai, and she will present the soil exchange project. So please, Barbara, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I quickly share my screen. 1 second. Okay, so please just confirm to me that you see my screen properly.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, perfect. So welcome everyone. I'm Barbara Papai from Innomind DIH in Hungary, and I am working on the coordination of soil exchange, which is a Horizon Europe CSA project. Today I will present our methodology for identifying and presenting practical soil solutions. This task within soil exchange is led by ATB, the Leibniz Institute for Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy in Germany.
Barbara, sorry for interrupting you. Please, everyone, turn off your microphone because we can share some. Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Please.
So the task is led by ATB, Leibniz Institute for Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy. So I'm very happy that Sebastian here actually, because if I miss something, he can finalize the speech. Then there is the University of Sassari and Discovery Center, also from Hungary. Soil exchange, in a nutshell, supports cross-border knowledge exchange in sustainable soil and farm management. The project aims to collect solutions, technologies, and practices from EIP Agri Operational Groups and other European initiatives, farmers, advisors, and practitioners, other stakeholders. And the goal is to make the practical results easier to access and easier to use, especially through the data dashboard and the related materials, which now I am going to present to you. The first step in our methodology was to identify practical soil solutions. Here we mapped the national soil-related operational groups and practices, developed and released an operational group survey, which meant to analyze the operational experiences of these OGs from the development phase through the implementation, and then finally also the reporting. Here we received 141 responses. And then we also developed a technical farmer survey where we received 391 responses, but this survey was focusing directly on sustainable soil management practices and the awareness that the practitioners has with them and what were their experiences, if any. And then in parallel, we created a standard template to collect and document these best practices. We started the data collection process and we began building the database. This is a graph from the analysis of our farmer survey. This survey helped us, as I mentioned previously, to understand the current awareness level of the sustainable soil management practices. Here on the responses, we can see why knowledge transfer is still needed and very important. Some practices are known and applied, but others remain less familiar to the farmers. We can see that there is a huge gap between the awareness and the implementation rate. This confirms also the need for the practical accessible information that is supporting the implementation directly on the farms. So where we are now. So far, the project has delivered several important outputs. The farmer survey analysis report has been completed. We have seen this graph from that. This is available on the website for everyone who is interested. We collected 66 sustainable soil management practices directly from operational groups and practitioners. We developed the digital dashboard, and we selected the 18 so-called best practices through the International Knowledge Board, which is a group of experts of the field. And the selection of these best practices was based on 3 criteria: climate change resilience, soil health improvement, and adaptability. We are now developing the adaptation pathways and the cost-benefit analysis for these 18 selected best practices. But all the practices are available on the dashboard through the website. For the best practice data collection, we use the structure template based on the WOCAT framework, which we changed a bit so make it easier for these operational groups to fill this template. Each template focused on one sustainable soil management practice. It could include information from up to 3 implementation sites, which helped us capturing the different geographic and agronomic conditions. And the collected information includes the general description, the classification, the location, the site details, and the observed impacts. And here we can see a screenshot of the data dashboard, which presents the project results in a visual and easy to understand format. It uses short text, charts, graphs, and tables to make the information easier to explore. The aim is to support the knowledge transfer and increase the acceptance and the use among the farmers. The dashboard is planned to be connected to established European-wide platforms, such as the EU Farm Book, for example. One of the features of this dashboard is the comparison chart. Users can select a practice category and then choose specific practices for comparison. So they can select up to 6 parameters, such as soil fertility, yield stability, or cost efficiency. And then the dashboard creates a bar chart that shows qualitative differences between the selected practices. Each of these practices is supported by additional knowledge materials. These include a practice summary, practice abstract, the adaptation guide, and the cost-benefit analysis, which is under development at the moment, and additional videos, farm demonstration videos, and podcasts. The purpose is to give to different users the type of information that they need, whether they want a quick overview or more detailed guidance for the implementation. Thank you very much for your attention, and for more information you can visit the Soil Exchange website through this QR code.
Great, thank you so much, Barbara. So let's move on to the next picture. So our next speaker is Anna Bago, who will introduce the AQUAGRI-KNOW project. So Anna, you may begin.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra, for your presentation. Okay, I'm Anna Bago from Beta Technological Center and coordinator of the AQUAGRI-KNOW project. And today, as Barbara, I will present our methodology to collect the knowledge and select this knowledge on the theme of water management on farm. Well, AQUAGRI-KNOW was born in the context that the water management is becoming a critical challenge due to this climate change and this increasing pressure on the resources. And despite that, we have to admit that a huge amount of knowledge exists, especially those coming from the EIP Agri Operational Groups, but also from other initiatives related to the water management on farm. But however, this knowledge is usually fragmented, distributed into different platforms. Sometimes it's difficult to access, and sometimes it is presented or write it in a language that is not easy to understand, or it's not in the same language as end users. So basically, here the key message is that the problem is not the lack of knowledge, but is the accessibility and the usability. So our main objective in AQUAGRI-KNOW is make this knowledge usable in practice. So here is our methodology to achieve this objective. AQUAGRI-KNOW will follow a structured 5-step methodology, starting for this knowledge collection and homogenization of the data, sorry. Then once we have this knowledge, we contextualize it and we align it with the existing policies, regulations, and also with the needs and challenges of the end users. Once we have this knowledge contextualized, aligned, and selected, it's time to translate this knowledge into different materials to promote the adoption of these innovations or these practices via the 4th step, that is using different mechanisms to share and exchange this knowledge. For example, showing the innovations or the practices on the ground via field visits or study visits, but also making webinars, or for example, developing an online open course, a MOOC. So that's one of the main activities of our project. And finally, we have this 5th step, the interconnection and widening, which the objective is to reach more end users outside the consortium, reaching more people, reaching more end users, and this is translated in having greater impact of the solutions and innovations identified. But as said in the beginning, today I will focus on this 3rd step, that is how we collect and structure this knowledge. We collect primarily our knowledge from 2 main sources. The first one is 12 operational groups specifically selected to coverage the whole water management value chains, and we complement this knowledge with additional EU-level initiatives. Can be other Horizon projects, but also databases such as the UCAM network database, the Cordis database. We also reach directly to the coordinators or the main implementators of the different practices to having a good quality knowledge of all these initiatives. And well, this approach ensures both deep OGs, but also EU-wide initiatives. So firstly, as we said, we started from 12 operational groups, but now we have reached into a total of 153 projects across Europe, covering 14 EU countries plus Switzerland. So once we have how we structure this knowledge, because we have a lot of knowledge on water management on farm, but basically all this connecting knowledge is classified into 4 strategies, starting from water use, going to water smart crops, water soil interface, and finally water reuse. So this knowledge is also mapped, is not only mapped into these 4 strategies, but is also mapped along the circular water value chain. That is this one, starting from source management, on farming infrastructure, data-driven farming, meaning that each strategy have 2 steps of this water management value chain. For us, it's very important to having the knowledge structure this way, because this ensures comparability of the knowledge and also supports decision making, connecting this innovation directly to the on-farm implementation. But in AQUAGRI-KNOW, we don't just collect knowledge, we also evaluate it. And to do so, we use a set of key indicators, the ones you can see on the screen. The first one is the implementation impact and usefulness. And this is about understanding whether solutions actually work in real conditions. For example, we ask ourselves and the innovation, if this solution has been tested on farms firstly, in how many locations or in how many contexts. Also for effectiveness, does it improve water efficiency, for example, or have been reduced the pollution or increased the resilience? So here, to sum up in this key indicator, we measure not if just exists the innovation, but if it works, where it works, and for whom it works. Another key indicator is this stakeholder engagement. And here we ask who is involved in that innovation or technology and how strong is that collaboration. For example, are farmers actively involved in that innovation? Is there a real multi-actor approach? Are advisor researchers or practitioners working together effectively? Then we have this risk and limitations framework. And here we ask what are the limitations, for example, technical complexity, investment needs, if there are regulatory barriers, if there's data gaps. And this point help us to understand why some solutions work well, but are not widely adopted. And finally, we have this accessibility of information key indicator. And here we ask, can people actually use that knowledge? For example, is the information easy to understand? Is it available in farmer-friendly formats? Has been effectively disseminated? This because knowledge that is not accessible is not usable. So basically, following these key indicators allow us to understand what works and why it works. And after evaluating this performance with key indicators, we go one step further and we assess whether solutions are viable, sustainable, and worth adopting. So for this, we apply a multidimensional cost-benefit and sustainability framework using these 4 dimensions. Here we ask, if this solution generate usable knowledge in terms of quality and clarity of the outputs, potential for scaling and replication, and also contribution to the AKIS and advisory systems. This is represented in blue in this scheme. This is an example of the different dimensions, no? Then we have the dimension of social value. And here we ask ourselves if there's a broader value beyond the farm in terms of improve working conditions, how is the knowledge sharing and the capacity building, if there are acceptance by farmers and stakeholders of this innovation. Meaning that the adoption depends not only on economics, but also on social acceptance. Then we have the environmental improvement represented in green in the screen. And here we ask if this solution contribute to more sustainable water management. For example, the reduction in water use, improvement in water quality, reduction of pollution, and the general contribution to climate adaptation. And our final dimension is the economic benefits and feasibility. And here we ask if this solution is economically realistic for farmers in terms of investment cost, the CAPEX, also the OPEX, potential savings, or for example, the return on investment. So using this approach, this four dimension helps identify not only the best performing solutions from a technical point of view, but also these hidden trade-offs. For example, solutions can be environmental strong, but may face economic barriers. So finally, when we have all this knowledge collected and analyzed, this not stay on the reports. This is integrated into our data warehouse. We are now working on achieving that. We don't have the final data warehouse, but we have all this information and analysis done. And now we are putting all this information into this data warehouse. So basically, this data warehouse is a centralized space, very structured, a repository of knowledge on water management that integrates the OG results, the EU-wide practices and projects, and also the analysis of the results. And one of the key characteristics of this data warehouse will be dynamic and continuously updated. Also that this is structured and searchable, and is also designed for reuse in the next steps of the project. So the key takeaways of this step methodology of AQUAGRI-KNOW is basically that AQUAGRI-KNOW does not just collect knowledge, but also structures, evaluate, and connect this knowledge to the practice. And finally, builds a dynamic system to maximize the impact and adoption of these identified practices or innovations. So that's all from my side, and thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna. So everyone, please remember, gather the question for later. There will be a dedicated session to discuss everything further. So we may proceed with our next speaker.
Yes, Alexandra.
Yes, of course, Edelbis Lopez, who will present thERBN project. So please, Edelbis, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. And I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Alessandra. Thank you, everybody, for participating today here in this exchange webinar between three synergy projects. Indeed, so now is my time to present the thERBN project. So it's a thematic European rural bioeconomic network. We have 1 year and a few months old. We started in January last year. This is a 3 years project, and well, we want to present today here a methodological approach to circular bioeconomic knowledge exchange and uptake from the perspective of the project. thERBN project is mainly formed by 20 partners, where 2 of them are affiliated, here. We are more or less based on 8 demo countries. The intention, the mission of the project is to accelerate the uptake of circular bioeconomic solutions among small farmers and foresters across Europe, connecting practitioners and all the advisors and researchers through practical and accessible knowledge through the platform. And of course, the project is dedicated to bringing circular bioeconomic solutions close to those practitioners. And we will do the activities mainly on those 8 demo countries to ensure that the knowledge is not only produced, but as was also presented in the project before, actually reached to the people who need it. Of course, based on the presentation, the topic that we want to give you today, we will talk about the challenge what the European farmers and foresters face, a persistent barrier related to the practical knowledge exist, but this is not only reached by practitioners effectively, so they need to be translated in a language and in the way that our practitioner can reach them and use them. So we have identified the project mainly for barriers. So the first one, it is a limited access to the practical, ready-to-use solution. There are a lot of information, but the way to reach the practitioner are the way that we need to work on that. So fragmented knowledge and weak advisory support is also one of the main barriers that we have also identified in the project. But it's also part of the two other projects who are working nowadays. I could say Mother AKIS, Cornet, EU for Advice, and so on. Highly invest cost and regulatory uncertainty. This is also from country to country, there are different level of investment and support and regulatory that need to be at the end also considered under the cap. And of course, the lack of trust in collective or innovative approach. So this is also the farmers we know need to see what we want to show them. They need to see with their own eyes and trust it. We need to organize in somehow a way of face-to-face on farm-to-farm activities. So those practical knowledge exist, but it doesn't reach the practitioner effectively. So we think that across the Europe, farmers and foresters facing similar obstacles, fragmented knowledge, high investment costs, regulatory uncertainty, and limited advice or support. That for our starting point was simple, just based on solutions that they exist, we need to collect, but they don't reach the practitioner in a usable way. And this is also the gap that the project is designed to bridge. Of course, so based on this, we have a methodological response. So the project built on completed knowledge cycle. So we work on in the three main groups. So rural, agricultural residues, forestry, and rural forestry, and livestock production. Based on this, we did it in the project, identify the urgent need. It's already done on the project. And then we did the capture of innovative grassroots solution. We are processing that. Standardize and document those knowledge. Share through the accessible platform, also based from the previous 4 project, sister project. And then connect those to the AKIS actors and strengthen those network. With this, what we expect from the project is ensure that the solutions are practice-oriented, validated, and easy to adopt by the practitioner. And our methodology follow a complete knowledge cycle where we identify those needs, we capture the solution, we standardize them, and share them through the accessible platform. Now we are in the way of give more visibility to the platform. It's a new version or the data version of the platform come from the BioRural project and connected to the AKIS community. This ensures that the knowledge is practical, also will be validated and ready for uptake by also synergy with other platforms and projects. So far, based on what we did in the 8 demo countries, has been we have collected 153 interviews with farmers and foresters and cooperative, small and medium enterprise. Of course, we added to there the 51 additional stakeholder involvement in the validation. We focus in the 3 main domains of the project, so agriculture, livestock, and forestry. And based on that, the output is already based on also our platform and website, 58 urgent need fast sheet that and all of you can also check and review and see what useful could be also for you. And well, this is what was done in the first step of the project, like I said, based on the work packet 1. And then we continue working on that. So what we found, and based on those fact sheet on the first activity that mentioned before, mainly on agriculture. We faced that the main barriers are the crop residues and the pruning residues and the management of the straw, management of the maize crop, and the greenhouse waste management. On the forestry, we have identified the main barriers are focused on forest residues, branches and leaf, small trees management, and wood byproducts, of course, and also what is well known by other projects, but this also validated in the livestock cluster. And then we have identified the management of the animal manure, fertilizers, wool, and weight, of course. So across those countries, the same residue stream keep appearing. This is what is in a way of a summary. And those are not an abstract issue. They are daily operational chance for farmers. And this part of the goal of the project is try to facilitate alternative solution how the practitioner can face those barriers. As a cross-cutting barrier, what was suggested by also the work packet 1 of the project. So we need to face on the logistic and infrastructure gaps and regulatory uncertainty, weak market for bio-based product, high investment costs, knowledge and advisory gaps, fragmented value chains, and of course, low trust in corrective solution. Beyond this residue, these barriers shape how solution must be designed and communicated. And this is why our approach focuses on simplicity, clarity, and practical value based on these identified cross-cutting barriers. In step 2 of the project, we say that, and based on the work also performing the work packet 1, they focus on the capturing solution. So once the urgent needs were identified, we started doing another activity, and the second was looking for already existing solution that can be implemented or applied to those urgently identified. So to address this need, we capture grassroots solution directly from the practitioner. So we interview solutions providers, adopters, and actors, and validate each solution before documenting it. This ensures that what we share is real and tested and relevant. And this is more or less I invite you to go to the web of the project and also the social media campaign that we have been performing throughout the project. You will see a summary of this practical guide divided in 3 groups. And also some practice data will be in the further fully available. But so far, you can also start to see some of these results in our social media publish. Those are part of the deliverable 1.2 of the project, but also relevant for the work that will be performed or is being performed in work packet 4, but will be taking over in work packet 5 and 6. Then we will move forward to the step 3 of the project, which is the practical knowledge format. So all designed to be simple, visual, and directly useful for practitioners are our platform. So we translate solution into formats that farmers can actually use, like a fact sheet, practical abstract, success history, business blueprint, and inventory. All are short, visual, and action-oriented, designed to support real decision-making, easy for a fast reader, and concrete what they need to receive. Based on that, and then all of this will be storage in the platform. So we have the thERBN platform upgraded in last year. By clicking in or scanning the first code, you will get access to the platform. By scanning the second code, then you will also get into the project website. So our upgrade thERBN platform is fully connected to the UFarmBook through the API connection, and it offers advanced search on geographical portal and a structured repository of practical or knowledge to ensure, and also based on the link with the EU Book, to ensure a long-term accessibility and integration with other EU initiatives. So, of course, the goal is open access to long-term maintenance of practical knowledge. And finally, as step 5 of the project, and we want to present today here and share it with you, is the building, and what we are doing now is a building of the AKIS community. So this ensures a sustained knowledge flow beyond the project lifetime. So the knowledge is only work when people connected, when people use, when people share. So we are building a national working group. This is what we're doing now in this stage of the project. We are building in a EU-wide community and a series of demo events of training. The intention is strengthening the advisory ecosystem and support long-term uptake of the project by establishing a national working group, creating a UI community, organizing those demo events. That if you go to social media of the project, you will see that also the excellent work of Alexandra and Evie from the QPlan and daily or weekly updating different campaign of each of the demo contest activities that are taking place from the project. So the thERBN contribution today to this webinar, what we hope is, in a summary, the project bring together not just need, but also solution and people. So our goal is simply to just make circular bioeconomy solution accessible, practical, and ready for real life implementation. So try to make a platform, a robust methodology granted in a real practitioner need with a structured approach to capturing and sharing the solution connected to the EU book, increasing the target stakeholder, and always putting there a real case solution. And one of those is the case that we will see in the second part of this webinar today, a presentation from Laura from DAFA. So based on this, I might say that I have finished my presentation and we will to answer some of your questions in the question and answer section. From my side, I'm finished and thank you for your attention today.
So very interesting presentation. So let me perfect. So now we are moving into the second part of this webinar, real innovation and real results. So our next speaker is Nikos Larkos, and he will present optimizing the economic and technical performance of agriculture in food by applying activated biochar to vegetable crops in the Nicosia region. So please.
Thank you, Alexandra. Morning, everyone. Hope you see my presentation. So today I'm gonna transfer key takeaways from this operational group that we run in Cyprus. The first programmatic period of the cooperation measure for the creation of operational groups in Cyprus. This project, the operational group is, and we are parts in AQUAGRI-KNOW. So we have known the project just a few minutes ago. We are in the framework of water-soil interface, and this project is bringing together everything that is being attributed now to circular bioeconomy, but in another, let's say, angle. So by using activated biochar, which was produced by forest residues with the corporation of public-private entities and used in vegetable crops in the Nicosia region, which this region that you see in the map is the driest place in Cyprus. It is a dry place either way, Cyprus, but that one is the driest place. The Western province has a really big issue with soil health degradation, has rural areas abandonment, which is always a bad thing to happen, because when rural areas are abandoned, they are abandoned by farmers. They are not abandoned by people that they want to use them in a malicious way, let's say. So someone will go there, but it will not do something good. Due to this, the primary production indices are being reduced for many years now. So this area is the most, let's say, interesting area for soil-water interface, as well as all the other aspects of the AQUAGRI-KNOW project. Apart from the problems of soil and water degradation, water quality degradation, and also quantity, it's a strong phenomenon of abandonment of agricultural land and this micro agriculture, very small plots of land that are being cultivated just for, let's say, traditional reasons. And improving the economic indicators of farming in this area and promoting a low input farming will ultimately attract young people, which, we have all these generational issues, the generational renewal issues, and of course, the aging of rural population. So, what does Oliver means? So Oliver means the optimization of agricultural inputs, vertical integration in rural economies. Now you're going to ask me, why are we mentioning vertical integration as part of circular bioeconomy? Well, honestly, when you take the definition of vertical integration, which started from the US, it's the procedure when you take the output of one procedure and you make it into an input of the following procedure. So when you take, I don't know if you remember geometry in high school or in any other phase of your educational journey, if you take all these small links, you create a circle at the end. Because they are not in line, they are all having like an angle or something. So these small parts of taking an output of something and making an input to something else, it is how vertical integration framework fits in the circular bioeconomy that we are saying today. And we are describing this project. So the objective of the operational group was to improve irrigation, fertilization, pesticides, and soil management, and prevent soil erosion, increase resource efficiency, of course, water use, energy, and waste. And we also applied the WEFE nexus inside this operational group, the water, energy, food, and environment nexus, reducing greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions, promoting carbon conservation and sequestration. So you might say, Nikos, how many aspects have you been? We just chosen an integrated applied solution, which is the forest residues valorization into activated biochar. And it just exploded. Afterwards, it had a really big output of impacts. As I said, the vertical integration is widely seen as a promising opportunity to create value added in rural economies and agri-food industries, while it can support farmers in their efforts to break out of the commodity trading framework. So you also have business aspects inside by retaining a large share of the value chain, vertical supply chain integration is seen as an essential strategy to optimize the production system, helping the agri-food industry to cope with global competition. So what we wanted to do in the operational group, develop soil-friendly agricultural practices, engage circular bioeconomy, implement digitalization in land management, and activate endogenic rehabilitation processes by the use of this organic substrate that we created for the purpose. Hardwood activated biochar, it serves as a means of optimizing oil irrigation and optimal water use practices. That is why we are referring to the soil-water interface in our case. And what we have presented is that with the use of activated biochar, we improve the physical-chemical properties of the soil, reducing irrigation frequency and intensity. Of course, biochar is a porous organic material. It benefited the soil water retention capacity in several ways. It reduced soil bark density, increased total average pore size and the surface soil area of soil. And then subsequently, it helped retain nutrients and water, hence reduce cost for irrigation and fertilizers, as well as improve the overall farm techno-economic performance. Just a small, graphic. How is biochar produced? It's produced by a method called pyrolysis. In our case, it was slow pyrolysis. That's why it got really high quality biochar. And as you can see, doesn't have only one output, has a lot of uses. Currently, worldwide, has 55 uses across many industries, and it's a cross-disciplinary approach. What we wanted to use out of the biochar attributes, it's a means to compensate the negative effects of climate change, as we said, for carbon sequestration, and CO2 and ammonia emissions retaining, stability of and biological activation of soil organic matter, enhancement of microbial activity, and ultimately increased yields and production quality, optimizing management of natural resources and nutrients. So what we've seen, these are just an overall of the results. We reduced irrigation requirements by 20%, which, for Cyprus is like a huge amount. We increased the plant resistance to stress. We saw uniformity of production within market requirements. We improved the organoleptic parameters of the produced crops, increased shelf life, and improved the post-harvest processing capabilities of those produce. Outcomes and what we are continuing is foster peer-to-peer learning and exchange innovative practices. Hence our positioning in AQUAGRI-KNOW and other kind of networks, advisory networks, or other kind of sectoral networks. We have 3,600 OGs in Europe, and the number is going to go double until the end of the year or the next year. We started using activated biochar also in animal husbandry, and actually it's has like tremendous capabilities there also. And the concept of creating the circular bioeconomy startup villages is the first time I am saying this, and it's something that we are going to integrate in AQUAGRI-KNOW project for the 4 frameworks that we are working on, giving this aspect to the rural economies. Thank you so much, and I'll be here also for the Q&A section.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nico. So let's move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Laura Silici, and she will present closing the nutrition cycle at the farm, how to produce vermicompost from vineyard and vineyard prunings. So, Laura, please.
Thank you, Alexandra, and good morning to everyone. So my presentation addresses a case studies of production of vermicompost using vinasse and grape pomace. This is a case study that was developed under the thERBN project that my colleague Edelvis already presented to you. So it won't be needed much more explanation on the context. I will just briefly introduce the organizations that implement the thERBN in Italy. We have got TEAFAL, which is the organization I came from, is a technical NGO whose purpose is promoting organic and regenerative agriculture amongst farmers. And we work in partnership with APRE, which is a consultancy that promotes the participation of Italian institutions into European funding programs. As mentioned, the case study is basically one of the grassroots innovations, the grassroots solutions that was identified following the participatory need assessment that we conducted in Italy. One of the output of this need assessment was the identification of those biomasses that are in need of particular attention in terms of their management. So one of these biomasses is actually the residues and the byproducts that come from the winemaking process. And in particular, we are talking about grape pomace, which is the skins, the seeds, and the stalks that remains after pressing the grapes, and the vinasse, which is the more fluid part. These residues are usually disposed as waste, or sometimes they are sent to distillery plants for producing grappa. As you can imagine, these residues were identified as particularly urgent in Italy because we have got so many small and medium enterprises producing wine. So there is a huge availability of these byproducts, and also the management issues came from the fact that these products are available in large concentration over a particular season. So there is a seasonal concentration of the availability of these residues. So our inspiration came from a farm called La Marronaia, located near Siena in Italy. This is a winemaking company which cultivates about 10 hectares of vineyards under organic and biodynamic farming. A few years ago, they used vermicompost to restore the soil on a particularly depleted piece of farmland. And they realized that it was especially effective because they could see dramatic effects on the soil structure and also on the plant vigor. So they decided to try and produce the vermicompost themselves, asking for technical support to a local production company called Centro Lombricoltura Toscano. So after some experimentation, they came up with a formula that allowed them to use their internal organic waste, which is in fact the grape pomace, the vinasse, and also the vineyard prunings. So these organic matrices mixed up with manure and straw basically make up the feeding for the earthworms. Last year was the third consecutive year that they were producing vermicompost. Over this period, they expanded the beds, the raising beds from 60 square meters to 140 square meters. And so last year they produced about 25 tons of vermicompost that was enough to cover their internal need for fertilizer. For those who are not familiar with vermicomposting, this is a process based on the biological activity of selected earthworms that transform organic waste into a especially effective soil improver called vermicompost or humus. In Italy, the most used species are two epigean species. That means that there are two earthworms that work at the shallower layer of the soil, at the top layer, and they're called tiger worm and red worm. The reason why these are particularly suited for our country is that they can withstand quite a wide range of temperatures from 10 to 25 up to 30 degrees. So they adapt very well to different climate conditions. The process is made of four main steps. First, the organic matrices need to undergo a pre-composting process. It means that the earthworms can't feed with the matrices as they are, but first they need to be pre-composted by other microorganisms. The time varies according to the nature of the biomass, but also to the external temperature. So, for instance, for grape pomace and vinasse, this time lasts about 2 to 4 months. After this time, these materials are spread usually through a bedding system, so they're spread in length, and they are inoculated with the earthworms. They start the process of feeding and digesting these materials. So the first output of the digester is called cast, and this is further elaborated through the enzymatic interaction with other bacteria, yeast, and other microorganisms in the soil. So what happens? Progressively, the earthworms feed these materials, and from time to time, usually every 10 to 15 days, they are fed again with a new layer of materials, up to the point where the bed reach a certain height. At this point, the top layer is removed. This is the part where the earthworms are. So this part is put aside and will be used for a new bedding system, which will progressively increase in order to accommodate the population of earthworms that increases for reproduction. The lower part is the part that is actually that made up the vermicompost. It can't be used straight away. It needs to be dried up for 4 to 6 weeks, and then it can be used on the field. So what is needed to start and implement this process? First of all, you need spaces for managing the organic matter in the different steps of the process. And of course, if you're using, like in the case of the Marronaia, your internal resources, you will need also the space for the pre-composting phase. But more important is the acquisition of the skills that you need not only to learn these different how these different operations need to be implemented, but also how to adapt them to the local condition. This is because the feeding time, the feeding frequency, also how much water needs to be given to keep humidity. All these operations are extremely dependent on the external and the local conditions. So you need to learn how to do them, but also how to adapt them to changes that may happen in the external environment. In terms of facilities, probably the only investment that needs to be done is in the watering system. It must be stressed that you don't need large volumes of water for breeding earthworms, but the watering must be constant in order to keep the humidity constant. What we observed looking at what the Marronaia did is that there are economic benefits because the initial investment is not large, and this upfront investment is compensated by the own production of a product that otherwise will be very expensive to buy in the market. At the same time, they are avoiding the costs that they will need to pay for either disposing or transporting these biomasses elsewhere, and at the same time are reducing dependence on other external inputs that they may need for fertilization. This is an important point because vermicompost is true that it's much more expensive compared to other organic soil improvers, but it is applied at much lower doses per hectare. And also the effectiveness in terms of soil fertility and plant vigor is also higher. Unfortunately, we don't have data because also I didn't have enough time to require them to the farm, but in the literature there are several studies pointing out how vermicompost improves not only the chemical and the physical structure of the soil, but also the biological structure of the soil. This is because it contains a low carbon nitrogen ratio, and also it helps build up organic matter, which results to be very stable over time. And also because of the increase in the microbial diversity, there is also an impact on soil structure and porosity. And that in turn also provides important environmental impacts. It's definitely environmental more sustainable, of course, compared to mineral fertilizer, but also compared to other organic fertilizers, including manure, for instance. And it helps the soil to become more balanced in terms of moisture, structure, and nutrients over time. But above all, we can realize that there is also not only an environmental, but also a social aspects, because this is a circular economy practice that closes the nutrient cycle at the farm. So, to conclude, it's true that vermicomposting is not an innovative technology, but for us, the originality stands in the fact that in this case, the solution has been applied making the most of the internal resources. And it's a practice that with some learning and some skills, some basic skills can be easily adapted to other type of organic matrices in order to close the nutrient cycle internally at the farm. Another important benefit is that contrary to other circular economy practices, you don't need economies of scale. So it's a way of managing and valorizing the residues that can be easily adopted by small and medium-sized farmers. Of course, there are also some limits. We discussed these limits with the practitioners and other technical advisors that participated into our training and demo days. One point of concern is the acquisition of the appropriate skills, and in particular skills, not only technical skills, but also the skills that are needed for ensuring that the operations, the spaces, and the resources are planned carefully in conjunction with the other operations and the usual workflow of the farm. Another point of concern are the gaps that exist in the knowledge about the normative frameworks, especially with regard to the waste disposal, also norms that relate to the handling and transport of residues and agricultural byproducts that sometimes are not very clear or even contradictory in some regions. And so this is an important constraint for especially the small operators that want to innovate, because they are very afraid about the fines and other problems, bureaucratic problems they can incur in. Well, these are just some pictures from the training and demo days that we organized at the Centro Lombricoltura Toscano that showed us that there was a great interest. We had many, not only farmers, but also technical advisors that came to learn about vermicomposting done through using grape pomace and Venus. That's it.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Laura. So,
Thank you very much.
perfect. So, let's move on. Our next and last speaker is Erik Gunneke, and he will present precision nutrition management based on high-resolution soil map solutions from the 3 EIP operational organization. So, Erik, the floor is yours.
Right. Thanks, Alexandra. Let me share the screen. And it's this one. I guess you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Thanks again, Alexandra, and welcome from my side too. I guess we are changing now a bit the scales. We go to the field scale, and I want to talk with you about what farmers could actually do to optimize fertilization, at least in a spatial manner. In this talk, I want to summarize what we did in the 3 projects starting in 2017 with precision liming in the PHPP project, continued in the Tonia project with the main macronutrients, and we'll finish with something what we are doing currently in the Bodhi project. The entire project was settled in Brandenburg, that is the state around Berlin in Germany. But let's dive directly into the problem and what our intention was to improve these managements. What you can see here is one possible procedure of how farmers in Germany often quantify the amount of fertilizers that are required. And this example is for liming, because in the first project we started with improving the pH conditions on farmers' fields. What we see here on the right side is this kind of lookup table system that they use to quantify the amount of calcium oxide for liming based on the pH value that they can find in their field and concerning a certain range of soil organic matter. There are other possibilities and other ways, other concentrations as well to determine this. And what we see here in this on top is the sheet for soil texture group number 1. For example, when you have less than 5% clay in your soil, there are 4 more soil groups with increasing clay content. I try to summarize that here with the colors. Additionally, the farmer can see the supply level or determine the supply level coming from very low, which means that there's a lot of liming required, up to supply level E, where no fertilization is required anymore because we have too much of this in the soil. And what a farmer always strives to is that they try to reach the optimum of the pH conditions in their soil. We brought all of this into this kind of linear system, what we see here, where you can read the amount of lime that is required according to a certain pH values. The colors here in this linear systems refer to the different soil textures that I mentioned. And for example, what we see here is that when you quantify that you have like 15% of clay in the soil, then you kind of need to apply 5 tons of lime to the soil to improve the conditions. If you have, for example, 20% of clay, you need 2 more tons that could be applied. And if you have like something like 10% of clay, you need even half of this amount. So what we did is we brought this, or there's this kind of gap in the system, and we wanted to close these gaps, producing a kind of stepless continuous approach rather than this class-based determination. So we brought that. I will briefly I don't go into details, but I'm showing it here how that looks like, how we did this. I want to discuss another problem that we usually face is that the soil samples are taking, at least for the soil texture, for finger testing. What we did here is that we took some soil samples for soil texture. We're analyzing them in the laboratories, determining or quantifying the amount of clay, silt, and sand, regrouping them to these soil groups, which you can see here on the x-axis, knowing the exact soil group. But we were also sending these samples to some laboratories where they did the finger testing and tried to assess the proper soil group. And what you can see here is the result from all these different laboratories, and they summarize the average here in this graphic. And what you can see is that with increasing clay content, these finger testers tend to underestimate the soil group. And now remember what we have seen in the last slide. Once you determine a certain soil group wrong, you may apply either too little or too much of the fertilizer, and that could make a huge difference in operating resources of a farm. So what we need is more reliable determination of these soil parameters, and in the best case in higher resolution. So we're doing the sedimentation analysis. But what can we do for the higher resolution? For soil texture, we are using a multi-sensor platform that was developed at the Institute of Vegetables and Ornamental Crops together with the University of Potsdam in Brandenburg, which uses these two sensor detections. It's a gamma sensor and the electrical resistivity that is detected. Both sensor systems are sensitive to soil texture, also to soil moisture, but that will be calculated off the equation. And what we see here, this first electrode system is injecting a current, and all the other electrodes that are pulled behind are receiving a voltage signal. And this, with increasing space, we can also go deeper into the soil and determining the structure of that one. This entire multi-sensor platform is pulled over the field, recording every 2 to 4 meters a point measurement. That means something like 150 to 200 points per hectare. And in total per day, that could be 100 to 150 hectares. Following a standard procedure, we are creating these clay, silt, and sand maps because we have point data. We need to interpolate them, taking soil samples, sending them to the laboratory, analyzing them, and calibrate the data. Just on a side note, because it's possible, we are also looking into layers, knowing the exact soil texture for deeper soil horizons or soil layers. Remember, for determining or quantifying the amount of lime, we also need the soil organic matter concentration in the soil. Therefore, we are currently using a satellite-based approach, taking bare soil scenes from Sentinel-2 recordings of the Copernicus program. Again, taking soil samples, calibrating the bare soil pictures, and then having these soil organic carbon maps. Here we see a reclassification again, and because we have very sandy soils in our region, the soil organic carbon concentration is also relatively low. But that's what it is. That's the situation. We also need the pH value to determine or quantify lime amounts. Therefore, in the first project, we used this multi-sensor platform from the United States. It has this it takes a soil sample. It also can be pulled over the field, taking the soil sample and pressing it against these ion selective antimon electrodes, measuring the pH value. It's very much similar what you can do in the laboratory. And then we receive this high resolution pH information. However, if those sensors, for example, are not available except for the soil texture sensor, because that's what we have here available in our project all the time, we need to find a solution of how to get the other values or the other parameters as well. Therefore, we are using our clay, silt, and sand maps and regrouping them. Additionally, we are taking we are producing relatively yield maps also from sentinel scenes of the Copernicus program. Which shows us a relative value. Something light green would be the average of yields in a field. And then we see the deviation with positive or with green towards a positive or increasing yields and towards the whitish colors with negative yields. We were grouping these two parameters, having soil groups and having relative yield groups with higher, lower, and middle yield contents. Creating these sub-areas of homogeneous texture and yield conditions. And now it's possible, if we don't have the sensors available, to take soil samples in these zones and analyze them for the pH value, phosphor, magnesium, potassium, and maybe even possible for mineral nitrogen. That is one way. So we have two ways now, a sensor-based approach and this sub-area approach. I continue with the sensor approach. What we see here is a comparison of what farmers actually still do, like determining the soil parameters uniformly for the whole field, and then quantify the amounts of fertilizer uniform as well, compared to our sensor-based approach. What we see here is that a farmer would determine this whole field as optimum in their conditions for the pH value. But we see with our sensor-based approach from the soil mapping that there are also areas that have already very high or high conditions of pH values. So that makes, again, the difference. And for the soil texture, we see that the farmer would actually say, okay, this is my soil group number 2. We have like something 5 to 12% of 12% of clay. And but on the sensor-based approach, we actually see that half of the field falls into two groups, like less than 5% of clay and soil group 2. Then we see here the comparison of what the farmer would apply, more than 1 tons per hectare of lime over the whole field. But of course, because we have this sensor information, we see, okay, there would be actually areas that would get no lime at all, or even less than 1 ton per hectare. And if we now say, okay, our sensor-based approach is something like a kind of new standard because we know the environment a bit better, we see that in comparison to the uniform approach, that there are areas that are fully oversupplied with lime. We did more comparisons in our project, not only the uniform approach, but also when farmers have other sources available. And then we see that some areas are not only oversupplied, but could be undersupplied as well, which means if they don't get enough fertilizer, you have a kind of loss in yield. We did this for the potassium, phosphor, and magnesium as well. If you know the concentration in the soil, you can determine the supply levels for these 3 parameters. We can see here that with these bluish colors that there's already a very high oversupply, except for phosphor, which is an optimum, but has some areas of little supply or too less. Even for magnesia, there are some areas that needs to be fertilized. And then we can quantify the amount of fertilizers that would be recommended for each area. For these nutrients, it's quite often the case that the fertilization only takes place every 4 to 6 years, unless there are combined fertilizers used, of course. Everything. So yeah, then we also do this for mineral nitrogen. We quantify again with sentinel-based information the relatively biomass, calibrate them with the real information that we have for all the fields, In this example for Winteroi, so that we know, okay, we have a variability here from 1.5 to 3.5 tons per hectare. We know that for Winteroi, we have the standard N demand of 170 kilogram of N per hectare, but this standard accounts for 7 tons per hectare, so we have to reduce that a little. We are correcting the total N demand by what the actual yield amount at this field is. We see we are not reaching the average standard in Germany here in this region, so we have way less, and therefore less amount of nitrogen. Remember the zoning I was talking about. We can also take or measure the mineral N available in the soil, subtracting it from the corrected amount. Additionally, also other information can be subtracted in case, for example, the N supply from soil organic matter or from previous fertilizations are available. Otherwise, farmers are using this information, and now we can distribute or scale that over the whole field and saying, okay, on my field, I need this amount of nitrogen applied in different regions for Winteroi after all the corrections. And yeah, and then farmers can split this amount for the several stages that they need to fertilize the soil. Summarizing it a bit, so yeah, in the projects we developed these sensor-based approaches for texture, soil organic matter, and pH, developing this lime application. We have desonations created. Also for the other macronutrients, we are doing it. And now in Bodhi, we are aiming to optimize this fertilization management, trying to create an interoperable process from the soil sensing to the actual application maps that needs to be created. So we are building this soil sensor platform, running all the algorithms, and then in a software, and combining everything that it is useful for farmers. Last slide. So we are developing this strategy that farmers can actually use the entire system. So a farmer who needs application maps gives kind of a request to a service provider who checks whether this data is available already. If the data is not already available, we are using our sensors or the satellite systems to detect the soil parameters, doing all the sampling and the laboratory analysis, running the algorithms to quantify the fertilizer amounts, and then the farmer can get the application maps. With that, I want to thank you, and I think we're done here.
So great, thank you so much, Eric. So now we are moving into the third and the last part of this webinar, the roundtable discussion. So actually, this is the moment that we would like to hear your voices, and we invite you to talk directly with our speakers. So if you have any questions, if there are any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, because I see that we are still a little bit shy. Let's start with a general question, a question that for all speakers. So, in one sentence, what is the, let's say, single biggest barrier preventing sustainable soil solution from scaling across Europe? Who would you like to take this one first from our speakers? Okay, I will choose Eric.
I counted to 3, Alexandra.
Nick.
Yeah, I said 1, 2, 3, sold. So single word. I'm gonna say well, it's let's say 2 words. It's knowledge and know-how. So that's there's a big gap between let's say the knowledge that Eric presented, the Delbis and Laura and also everybody, to how this is going to be applied in real conditions, in real life. This is what Anna Bao mentioned about translating this into the farmers' vocabulary, and then making them understand the significance of making this change. Management of change, of course, is really a special, let's say, a thing that needs to take a lot of things into account. But especially in rural areas, it takes into another gravity. That's my take.
Great, thank you, Eric. And then
Yeah, I think I can build on that, and I would say it's the kind of lack of harmonized and accessible and interoperable data, and maybe also governance frameworks across all the regions and sectors that we have in Europe and in agriculture. That's what I think. Yeah.
Anna, thank you. Anna?
Yeah, actually, Nikos and Eric explained it very well. But when in the Nikos intervention, he said knowledge and know-how, and for me it's like it's the same, but I will add the accessibility, as Eric said, that it's the knowledge, the accessibility of that knowledge, and sometimes the knowledge is accessible, but it's not relevant for the end users. So for me, if the information is relevant and is accessible, then the uptake and the adoption takes place.
Very interesting, actually. Great. Do you want someone to add something?
Well, also, Alexander, if I can also add here.
Of course.
Yes, indeed. So it's more or less what was mentioned from the previous speaker. Indeed, is also the translation to local practice knowledge. So, okay, they are info, they are resource. Sometimes they are storage or isolated in regional place, database in the local language. So we need to also check first with the use nowadays of the artificial intelligence translation, so translate as much as possible all the materials, but also identify where are the channel of communication. So I remember one of the projects that our team was coordinating in 2009 was Arachnos and Eureka, and one of the barriers that was identified there was the channel. So what are the main channel of knowledge way that the farmers or the practitioners that we want to reach, so breeders or foresters, check daily to receive info, to receive knowledge. So through those channels, we need to analyze the innovations, the solution that we need to also communicate to them.
Thank you, Delbus. I have a question. Barbara, you collected responses from hundreds of farmers and identified dozens of practices. Well, what surprised you most about the cut between available solution and actual farmer awareness?
I think what stood out most was not the lack of the solutions, because Europe already has a large number of tested practices and pilot projects, operational group results. I think the real gap is more in the accessibility and the translation, as Adelby said, into practical farming decision. Many farmers are aware of broad concepts, such as, I don't know, cover crops or reduced tillage, but they often do not have access to the clear, comparable information about the implementation, the costs, risks, or local adaptation possibilities. So in many cases, the knowledge exists in the reports, research papers, and, I don't know, project outcomes, which we are also producing with soil exchange, right? But not in farmers that farmers can immediately use. So this is building on the answers for the previous question from the others. And I think another important finding was for us that farmers trust the practical evidence much more than the general recommendations. So they want to know for example, has this worked on farm to similar to mine, or what was the cost of it? What changed in the yield stability or soil quality? And this practical layer is often missing from the traditional dissemination. And I think just one more thought is that there is also we have seen a strong regional differences, which is also important to take into account. That in some countries, advisory system and farmer networks are already support knowledge exchange very effectively, but in others, farmers still rely heavily on informal peer-to-peer learning experiences.
And also, Barbara, if a farmer watching today wants to start with one soil improving practice tomorrow, what would you recommend as, let's call it the easiest entry point?
I think, well, in many cases, what we've seen from the survey is that, for example, cover cropping is one of the most accessible entry point. It's relatively adaptable across different farming systems and can deliver visible benefits in the soil structure, erosion reduction, moisture, biodiversity support, even in small-scale implementation. Even the small-scale implementation can provide useful learning without requiring a complete system redesign. But that said, there is not a universal solution. So the best entry point, I think, always depends on the local soil condition, crop rotation, climate and farm economics. The important thing instead is to start with a manageable step rather than aiming for a complete transformation immediately. Farmers, I think, what we have seen is they often gain confidence through gradual implementation and observation on their own fields. So the peer exchange, again, I must add here that is very important. Because they are much more likely to adopt a new practice when they can discuss experiences with other farming. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. With other farming. Facing other farmers facing similar conditions.
I see. Great. Thank you so much. And Eric, beyond fertilization and liming, what other practical application can these high-resolution soil map support farms?
Yeah. Okay, besides the fertilization, what we are doing in the project of all the nutrients and liming included, I think it's very valuable information to have information about the soil texture for probably example, seeding issues, like what could be the actual seeding depth or density, because in a sandy soil, farmers may put another amount of seeds in the soil than in a clay or loamy soil. And of course, because the soil texture is also determining or describing the physical and hydrological conditions of the soil, like the water storage, the infiltration capacity, it can also be used, this information, in particular soil texture, for irrigation purposes. So if I'm in a drier area, as we heard for Cyprus, for example, and I know in my soil conditions, of course, then I can somehow estimate or quantify also irrigation water amounts that could be applied to the soil. That could be potential solutions or additional ways to use it.
Right. Thank you. Do we have any question from our audience? Okay, I think we can continue because we have heard so inspiring examples. So I have some questions, So, Eric, one more question. Your examples are based on specific regional conditions. How adaptable is this approach to different European soils and farming systems?
Now we need to differ, like we truly have the soil maps and the fertilization maps. The soil maps, like texture, soil organic matter, for example, that is like ubiquitary and can be used anywhere because it's physics. So it's like that can be done anywhere. And so we can detect the soil properties everywhere. However, the fertilization systems are always a bit different in each country or in each area. And therefore, that might be a bit of an obstacle. So far we used algorithms and fertilization strategies that are developed in Germany. And therefore, it might be a bit more difficult to bring them also to other regions, this kind of system. But for the soil maps, it's certainly possible.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, I thought that we had a question on the chat. So, Nikos, you said that cyber faces severe water stress. Do you see biochar becoming a climate adaptation necessity rather than just an innovation?
Not a necessity, because as we've seen also from Laura, there's also vermicompost, there's also the normal compost, all these organic materials that are being produced by procedures of valorization. They all have their own value. So depending, again, that we're saying this is regional requirements. There are also legislative requirements. There are European directives. It's all of these aspects you need to take into account. But as biochar, as vermicompost, as any kind of other organic material, they are tools of being able to compensate this the decline in soil health, a decline in water quality, to compensate water scarcity. All of these challenges that all regions have to attend to right now. It's a really active ingredient. You can, I don't know, I suppose everybody knows about active ingredients in plant protection products. When you have in a plant protection product, you have the active ingredient 1% and then 99 other things that are helping the active ingredient to go to work. So biochar is that active ingredient. I mean, we used for 1 hectare, we used less than 1 ton of biochar to apply, and we saw that results. So of course it was a challenge how to apply it, but we did anyway. So by combining these organic materials together and combining their attributes, the porous structure of biochar with the organic content of vermicompost, then something else. I mean, we can put all together vermicompost, biochar, and lime, and we can have a substrate that will help in various ways in soil management and nutrient cycle management and all of these aspects. So it's not a necessity, it's a really good opportunity and a really good tool to use.
I see. Great, thank you. Edelweiss, may I ask, what role should advisors and the local farmer network play in accelerating circular bioeconomy adoption?
Well, Alexander, we think that the local advisors and to local also farmers and network, they are essential because they bridge between the innovations and the practice. Advisors and local network might help in the translation of technical knowledge into locally. So let's say also from my side as a researcher in a lab, we create the solution in a way, and also we are familiar to how to publish and make the knowledge available through as a scientific journal. But this is, we know also, I'm also aware of that. The farmers, this is not the way that the farmers will interpret it and apply. So we need to communicate, translate to advisors, and those advisors are the ones who find the way, and also because one of the more important things for farmers are the trust, and they trust most to those advisors sometimes on the way to scientific. They think they say sometimes that the scientific are driven too high, they are not applied, and this is also a way of communication and for us the main role of the advisor. So it's into locally relevant solution and also create the continuity needed for long-term adoption. So advisors are the blocking the chain between scientific to farmers.
Thank you, Delpes. Laura, you highlighted the successful vermicomposting management requires management skills. What of training is most needed?
Can easily reconnect what Edelbis just said. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The technical training itself may not be so difficult to acquire, because especially in the case of vermicomposting, you don't need really very deep skills in terms of technical knowledge. But the technical assistance from advisors or other local companies or networks can be very useful in terms of helping the farmers to know how to address the problems while they come along. So it is important to acquire the basic knowledge, the technical knowledge, but also the skills to face the problems. And in this case, continuous support from advisor is very important. Another type of training that it's important to mention is filling those gaps regarding the knowledge about what can be done and what can't be done at the farm, at the local level, in terms of managing organic matter, how to dispose it, handling, transporting to, for instance, from a farm to another. So this is another type of knowledge that needs to be included when thinking about how to train farmers about, on picking up this type of practices. Well, more widely, we can say that it would be also important to provide some support in terms of how farmers can organize themselves. So in this case, I'm not sure we can talk about training exactly, but transferring knowledge about, what are resources available at territorial level in terms of organic matter available, and from whom and who is available to join forces to implement circular solutions together.
Thank you. Anna, your methodology combines knowledge collection, evaluation, and structuring. Which step do you think is most critical to ensure real impact on farms?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I mean, it's necessary to collect all this knowledge and structuring in one side, no, to be able to use it later. But for me, the most critical step is the evaluation of that knowledge, the evaluation from different perspective, because this is how we understand what actually works in the real farm conditions. So yeah, I would set evaluation of that knowledge.
Great. So let's open this up a little more broadly. So another question for all of you. If fundings were not the issue, what will still prevent farmers from adopting these solutions? Who wants to start? Anna, do you want to start?
Yeah, have you said the economic issue? I mean, if
exactly. Let's say funding were not the issue.
Yeah, for me, and it's very related from the question of the beginning, the start of the discussion. I would say the variable of that knowledge and the complexity to implement it. Yeah, because if the knowledge or the innovation is relevant to the farmer and they know how to implement it, I mean, if there's no economic barriers, no, then you have everything to implement it, and yeah. And I would say always also the trust. It's something that Barbara also commented. The trust on the implementation, on the methodology, or the information source. And yeah, in the most of the cases is this peer learning. No? Farmers at the end trust farmers.
Barbara, please.
Yeah, I think besides the trust, which is very important, but also comes to my mind that even if there is a trust, and I can see this as I as a farmer, not me personally, I can see this practice in another farm, but there's still the risk. And I think that is very important for farmers to have all this information because farmers cannot just experiment casually with practices that affect the yield, the labor planning, or the cash flow. So very often, yes, farms in operational groups are big enough and have this, let's say, privilege that they have the possibility to test things. But there are several small-scale farmers who doesn't have this possibility. So I would say the risk.
Indeed. Edward, please.
Well, Alexandra, indeed, even if funding were not the issues, and based on the experience from our side, uncertainty and risk perception would remain as the major barrier. So farmers need confidence that solutions are practical, the solutions are also possible to be implemented and also compatible with their daily reality. So we were aware that also from the CAP we have different approach, and we want to reduce, let's say, in Europe the meat production. We want to increase the production of plant-based protein. So there are a lot of regulation or of implementation need from the CAP. But even if the problem is not the funding, is the practicality for the farmers. They need to choose. So they need to be sure that they are in the daily reality that they will face, and also the advisors and the trainer have the capacity and the experience if they have a question and doubt to who and to where they will find the solution. So it's about the risk perception from the farmer. It's not just about the funding, it's also that they need to be aware, they need to be sure that they can be the alternative can be implemented, and also in the long term. And also based on that, again, the role of the advisors or the proof centrum where it can be implemented in and show the demo days to the farmers are important to trust, to earn trust to farmers.
Can I jump outside the box?
Of course, of course.
So, completely outside the box, for me, it's a matter of attitude. So when I say, I mean, a matter of attitude is that they want to be included in the creation of the solution that, we try to give to them. Most of the times, they're not included. So when we are talking about solidarity, we can talk about also agriculture solidarity. We need to ask them what they want, how they want it, what can they do, before starting anything. So for them, they will raise their defenses. They have their defenses already up. Farmers. Everybody wants to get something from them, okay? Everybody. multinational companies with agricultural products, researchers with their research, politicians with their politics, regional, they are a target group that are really important for many things. So they already have their defenses up. So when you go, you have to lower their defenses first. In order to lower their defense, is to go with an attitude of making them part of this procedure, not taking them into advantage.
Mhm. Yes.
I totally agree. And another question, which is harder, developing innovation or scaling farmer adoption? Eric, please.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the scaling because we all are full of ideas and we develop our innovations and we have the solution kind of available. But now of course we need to think about like how can we bring that to at least to the region where we developed it. And then of course even beyond, yeah, to a European scale or something. So that's the harder challenge. A solution could always be probably something like we need this kind of knowledge transfer, maybe with either having a model region or we need like model farms like all across Europe or something. That maybe could help or something where certain techniques are implemented and farmers from a certain region where the innovation wasn't developed but has access to it way easier. Like now we are talking English, but in Germany, not everybody talks then English or Greek or French or anything else. So we need in each region with the languages and all these barriers, maybe model farms or anything like that.
Very interesting. Someone else? Do you want to add something?
Yes. Well, indeed,
Yes.
Alexandra, and completely agree with Eric. So scaling adoption is definitely harder than the innovation. So innovation can happen in an isolated context. So you can have a small research center or small operational group, isolated group. They can have innovative solution, but it is to scale up to EU level. We need to have trust in the adoption of this. Again, so the role of the advisor, also the translation from country to country. This is also part of the advisory support. They will interpret it and they will translate to the local language or also local context. The most important here also what the commission like to look is also the long-term engagement. So in the innovation, sometimes is based on a few participants, but when you look to implementation or scaling adoption, then you need to see all the chain who are the other stakeholder involvement to be sure that the long-term engagement is completed. So you will have what is the base of what will be implemented, so what they require, and be sure that after the project is implemented because they are actors and local actors who care about that. Because if you need some, let's say, product or importing product or selling product or managing or machinery, so how it will be sure that even when the project finish, it remain in the long term. So this is also why you think that scaling what we can create in a small research group is more different than difficult than innovation.
Thank you very much. Someone else? And my last question, very good one. What give you the most optimism about the future of soil, of sustainable soil and circular agriculture in Europe?
What's the question again? Sorry, it was
What
not
gives
very
you the
clear.
most? Yeah, what gives you the most optimism about the future of sustainable circular agriculture in Europe? Let's say the thing that we think positive about the future of sustainable in Europe. Anna, please.
Yes, maybe I can start the discussion saying that I believe that now, and this is growing actually, now have technologies to communicate to each other, reaching out borders, no? And I mean that there's a growing collaboration between the farmers, the advisors, researchers. As Nico said, we need to optimize the way we reach each other, collaborating, not taking advantage from each other. It's like more this collaboration, co-creating solutions, sharing the results. So for me, it's like the most optimizing thing, optimistic thing of that we have more, media or more methods to reach each other, even crossing borders.
Great, exactly. So, yes?
Yes, well, Alexandra, I also would like to say that I believe that the stronger support for knowledge exchange and also advisory system within the AKIS would have enormous impact as well, especially if the practical farmers-to-farmer learning become more systematically supported by the AKIS actors in each of the member state. On the past, I remember in Spain, I started working on a AKIS platform. Now this is an initiative that the other member states have started. So we need to see that also the AKIS environment should be very powerful to connect all the actors. And I think indeed, so all the activity related to AKIS should be better implemented or understand, and all the blocking the chain of the AKIS could be better considered for the sustainability of Europe or how we want to see Europe in 5 years longer.
I totally agree with both of you, and we need to talk, and now we can do it much easier. So I totally agree. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. I would like to a big thank you to our speakers for sharing their valuable insights. Of course, to Tatiana for all her work on the organizational side, and of course to all of you who joined us today. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.